Pikmin is a game that I've wanted to talk about for quite some time, but I haven't really been completely sure how to approach it, because it's not a game I can really talk about in the same way I've talked about some other games on this channel. I'm not particularly good at the game, I don't really know anything about its inner workings at all, and I've never really interacted with the community at all. Pikmin is very much just a game that I happened to play, and I really liked. I can't even talk about the series as a whole, because I've only actually finished Pikmin 1 and 2. I beat both of them on stream, and loved both. I've made a terrible decision. But as for 3 and 4, I played like 20% of Pikmin 3 a decade ago and just didn't get it, and Pikmin 4 has just been big chilling on my Switch completely untouched, waiting for me to get to that other 80% of Pikmin 3. However, even before I tried any of the mainline games, I was definitely interested in Pikmin. I mean, I was one of Ireland's 7 Pikmin Bloom enjoyers, and I had watched plenty of videos on the series even before touching any of the games. However, in doing so, I definitely got the impression that Pikmin 1 was the game that got the least focus. Like, Pikmin 2's the fan favorite, and I mean, there's inherently a lot to say about it because the game is just like that. Pikmin 3 is the divisive one, and obviously Pikmin 4 wasn't out at the time, but now Pikmin 4 is the new one, so it's only inevitable that people are going to be talking about it. However, Pikmin 1 really felt like it just didn't get the same level of attention that the others did, and I think that's a real shame because I think the game is really something special. Because it was the one I saw discussed the least, I didn't really know what to expect from Pikmin 1 when I played it for the first time. I guess I was just expecting a relatively short, relatively cozy game, and I thought yellow Pikmin were dog shit because a YouTuber said so. They're not really, they're like fine, we'll get to that. However, what I ended up getting was more than that. I got a really special experience that I haven't really been able to replicate with any other game in recent memory. But before I get into why Pikmin 1 is so important to me and why I appreciate the game so much, I should probably just give a basic overview of it, since I've never talked about Pikmin on the main channel before, so let's just get into that real quick. So, the game opens on a cutscene of Captain Olimar flying through space in the SS Dolphin. His ship gets hit by a sick nasty meteor, which sends him hurtling towards a vaguely Earth-like planet, and as he enters the planet's atmosphere, his ship starts to break apart, and the parts of the ship are scattered all across the planet. Olimar wakes up in the impact site, finds his ship completely destroyed, and realizes that he only has 30 days before his life support gives out due to the presence of poisonous oxygen on this planet. However, soon after, Olimar stumbles across the red onion, which produces a Pikmin. He sprouts it, looks at it funny, and then he grows a few more, and with the help of the Pikmin, he shoves a cool box out the way and collects the engine for his ship. And while his ship is still missing 29 parts, having the engine back is at least enough to access other parts of the planet, and with the help of the Pikmin, collect those missing parts. So that's all the setup you get. You have 30 days to collect the missing parts of your ship with the help of the Pikmin, and depending on how that goes for you, there are 3 different endings that you can get. You either get the good ending, where you collect all 30 parts, and as soon as you've brought the final one back to the ship, have a successful takeoff and make it home. The neutral ending, where you don't manage to collect everything after 30 days, but at the very least get by with just the 25 mandatory parts. And the bad ending, where you don't even get them, attempt to take off, and you just kinda crash, and Olimar becomes a fucked up little Pikmin creature. Don't worry, buddy, it's all gonna be worth it soon. People have talked about just how good of a motivator the 30-day limit and the implications it holds are for beating the game, and I couldn't agree more. It's really something else, especially when you combine it with the fact that you're doing it for Olimar, and I love him. Olimar is so likable, it's unbelievable. Like, it's so nice how hopeful and determined he is throughout the game, and then there's just little things, how, like, immediately after crashing in the impact site, he discovers the Pikmin, and despite the fact that, like, at the time, he's so fucked, he's, like, immediately thinking about, like, not using the Pikmin, but researching them, and learning more about them. That's so sweet! There's other little bits here and there where his character really shines, like some of the dialogue he has when finding new ship parts, or during his end of day logs especially, where he reminisces about his family and talks about things he's learned on the planet. It's so good! Although I will say, if you're beating the game, like, pretty fast, Some of the end of day logs are like unintentionally pretty funny. Like you can get things where Olimar is like, "Oh, I've detected ship parts in this area. I must investigate post haste." And he's talking about an area that like you just wrapped up. Like you got everything in there in like 2 days. You were an animal. But no, Olimar's great. Pikmin features, as you probably already knew, 3 different types of Pikmin. The red Pikmin, the blue Pikmin, and the yellow Pikmin. And they all serve a purpose. I'd say Pikmin 1 is probably the most well-balanced Pikmin. Red Pikmin are immune to fire, which doesn't come up all that often, but they're still great thanks to the fact that they do 50% more damage on top of that, which is very applicable. Blue Pikmin can survive in water, which automatically makes them absolutely incredible, because boy oh boy, this game likes its water. Yellow Pikmin definitely get a bit of a bad rep, but they're honestly fine. It's not that they're outclassed by reds and blues, it's just that the situations where you absolutely need them are, you know, few and far between. Yellow Pikmin can be thrown further and higher than reds and blues, which is important for certain ship parts, and they're the only Pikmin that can interact with bomb rocks, which are needed to break stone walls, and are useful in killing enemies, or breaking bramble walls faster than just having your Pikmin chip away at it. Still, even though you're never going to need that many of them, it doesn't change the fact that, without glitches at least, there are plenty of treasures where you do need yellow Pikmin, and bomb rocks are at worst incredibly useful and at best absolutely necessary for progression. Of course, I didn't know that when I started playing, so I never bought more than like 15 of them with me at a time. And because I was a new player, I would get like 4 of them eaten on the way to the thing that needed 15 yellows, so, you know, maybe give him a little credit, that's all I'm saying. So that's just like a very basic overview of what Pikmin is. The setup, what you have to do, how you go about it, and while I did have a little bit of a gush along the way about some things I do really like, we still haven't gotten into what makes the game so special for me personally, and what I would consider the game's biggest strength. And that's its replayability. Which I would not blame you for finding a really lame answer. Pikmin 1 is inherently a very replayable game. Your goal, deadline, and stakes are laid out to you almost immediately, and they never really change at all. And it's thanks to that deadline that a playthrough of Pikmin is pretty much never gonna last longer than about 6.5 hours. Unless you just like sit in the impact site for an hour and a half on the first day enjoying the vibes, which like, it's your playthrough. Don't let me tell you how to play, that's your business. Still, this is not a new concept by any means. Plenty of people have talked about Pikmin's replayability as a selling point, and at the end of the day, pretty much any game is replayable if you love it enough and want to put the time in, so what gives? What makes Pikmin more special than other games that you can replay? And at least for me, the answer is that I replayed it. Which sounds pretty fucking stupid, but bear with me. When I initially played Pikmin, it was extremely rare for me to replay games. I almost never did it. I mean, I'm a self-employed person with basically 0 time management skills, so if I'm playing a game in my own time, it's usually at the very end of the day when I'm just like comfy in bed. And I'm like tired by that point, so I usually don't want something that's super high demanding or challenging. I mean, my single favorite game of all time is pretty much just a visual novel that occasionally asks you, well, what do you think, huh? Now, hearing that, you'd probably assume I love a good cozy game. You know, the kind of game that you can sink countless hours into, that just has a really nice, comfy vibe. You know, a real low-stakes game that has a lot of little tasks that you can chip away at over time. Things like Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, maybe Minecraft. And honestly, no. They really don't gel with games like that. And I kind of hate that I don't. It took me a really long time to figure out why I had such a hard time sticking with games like this, and I think the key issue is that while they give you a lot of things to do, I found it really hard to keep my motivation once I had done the thing I wanted to do most. Like, there's a reason that nearly all of my Minecraft worlds just get completely abandoned the second I find Diamond. I mean, you want me to keep playing Stardew Valley after I've already married the twink? What's the point? What's here for me anymore? I really wish I wasn't like this, because I always wanted to have a game that I could consistently come back to and just chip away at a little bit at a time each day, but it just never worked out. Even games that I initially really clicked with, like Stardew Valley, after a while I'd skip a day or two, And then sooner or later, before you know it, you're looking at your Switch and it's saying, last played 2 years ago. But what does this have to do with Pikmin? In a weird way, Pikmin has sort of become the game that I keep coming back to. When I initially played Pikmin on stream, I really liked it. I had a great time. There were some funny moments, there were some funny fumbles. I'm gonna set this one red on him, so... And I ended up beating the game in 25 days. Which, for a first playthrough, is probably, like, fine. But then, once that was done, I almost immediately hopped on my Switch, and I beat the game again. This time in 18 days. And after I did that, I went ahead and I beat the game a third time in 14 days. And then I beat the game a fourth time for this video, and I ended up beating it in 10 days. So, why am I like this? This might not sound very relaxing or cozy or comfy at all. If anything, it might seem a little bit stressful. I mean, a game can only be so cozy while also having the ball bear in it. And yeah, like I said, I'm usually not one for replaying games at all, but I am especially not one for trying to replay games and cut down on my time the best I can, really trying to squeeze everything I can out of it. That's just usually not my style. But I think Pikmin really makes it work, because, at least in my opinion, Pikmin strikes a perfect balance when it comes to how much it wants from the player and how much the player has to put in. Pikmin wants you to collect 30 ship parts in 30 days. Maybe a little bit daunting for a new player, but at the end of the day, it is still the only task you have to do. And chipping away at it bit by bit feels fantastic. Now, I'm fully aware that this is not a unique concept to Pikmin. There are plenty of linear games that just have one thing that you need to do. Get from A to B, maybe that's the whole ass game. So what makes beating Pikmin quickly any different from something like that? And for me, it's the focus on in-game days rather than real time. Speedrunning a game outside of maybe individual levels if they're pretty short and involve some kind of fun trick has basically never appealed to me at all. The whole thing of having to just maintain a good pace over an extended period of time, and if enough things go wrong your run is dead, has just never appealed to me. It's way too stressful for my liking. However, on the other end of the spectrum, trying to cut down on the number of days it takes me to beat Pikmin has been an absolutely wonderful experience. I mean, even right now as I'm recording this video, I've got another playthrough going, and I'm gonna shoot for 9 days. I don't know if that's gonna work. The 10-day one was pretty rough, but we'll see. We'll see what we can do. Being able to take things a day at a time as opposed to doing a single flawless real-time run where a single mistake can cost everything just takes so much pressure off, and at least for me, that's really nice. But it doesn't make it too easy to the point where it's just, you know, too laid back. There's still that sense of strategy. You've got to plan out exactly what you want to get done in a single day, and even then, you obviously have to actually execute it. You might have to manage multiple groups of Pikmin at once. You might have something go horribly wrong that you weren't expecting, and then you might have to do some quick thinking on the fly. Is there something else I can do? Is this day even worth salvaging? Should I just reset? I really enjoy that. I think even if you're just doing a second playthrough and you're still not super familiar with the game, but you at least know where stuff is and what the game wants from you, playing the game with this kind of mindset can be really, really rewarding. And yeah, that can be kind of stressful, but the more you're packing into each day, the less days you have to do, obviously. So that sort of takes some of the pressure off in a way. It's not like you're gonna beat the Forest Navel in 2 days and you're gonna go, fuck, that was exhausting, and what, I got like 13 days left? No, you probably got like 3 or 4, you're gonna be okay. I adore this more staggered approach to beating a game as fast as possible, because while it is a lot less stressful than just doing one perfect run, you know, doing it bit by bit, maybe chipping away at it over the course of a couple days, you still get the highs and the excitement of a real run. You have plenty of instances where the clock is counting down just as your Pikmin carry the very last piece back to the ship and you barely scrape by. Maybe you're making your way to another ship part with a group of Pikmin, and on the way, you'll pass 2 other groups of Pikmin that you've trusted ship parts to, and you just feel like a little bit of a tactical genius, like, yeah, I can trust them to do that. I'll leave them on their way and I'll tackle this. I don't know, that's just nice. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you'll have days where you finish a little bit ahead of schedule, and as opposed to a real-time run, you'll have a little bit of time just to, you know, take it all in, just stand there and enjoy the vibes. And I love that. Obviously, you do have the option of just skipping to sunset and going on to the next day, but personally, I almost never do that. In a weird way, just standing there, knowing I got everything I wanted to get done with time to spare, feels like a really nice reward in its own right. Nice. Another benefit to the day-by-day approach as opposed to a real-time run is that if something does go horribly wrong and it's very clear that this day just isn't gonna happen, you can just reset it and try the day again. And I'm sure some people wouldn't really care for that, you know, maybe that feels like cheating to them, but I don't know. Personally, I really like that option, and I did it plenty of times in the 10-day run that I did for this video. And speaking of fun, this is very subjective, but I think something else that's nice about being more willing to reset a day if something goes wrong is that it makes things going wrong easier to stomach, right? Like, you're not losing an entire run, it's just a day, so whatever. It's a lot easier to find things going wrong funny rather than incredibly irritating. Okay, so just as an example, on day 7 of the playthrough I did for this video, I set out to get 2 of the treasures in the forest Navel. Specifically the 2 behind this bramble wall here, the Libra and the analog computer. I love this section of the game because it's just a really nice little condensed area with some good puzzles. You need all 3 types of Pikmin here, and I think that's kind of neat. You need at least 20 Pikmin to carry the analog computer, and it's sitting in water, so you inherently need blues. And while the Libra only needs 15, you need yellows and blues. The Libra is very high up, so you need yellow Pikmin to be able to reach it, and you need blues to activate this geyser here so Olimar can get up to the first ledge. And even then, once you've got both of these treasures out of their respective areas, you ideally want red Pikmin to do the carrying, because the path is littered with fire geysers, and even outside, there's a bunch of fiery blowhogs that red Pikmin will be completely unaffected by. So yeah, there's your setup. And it didn't entirely go amazingly for me. I got the analog computer out of the water, and then I immediately went to get my reds, of which I had about 40 on me. I left 20 behind, and then took 20 with me to go get the analog computer to carry through the fire, and while they were doing that, I used the blues and the yellows to do the puzzle for the Libra. So I got the Libra down, and I came back to pass it off to my group of reds, and there's nobody here. And I just kind of stood there for a minute, putting 2 and 2 together, and I realized that the red Pikmin carrying the analog computer had passed through the other group of red Pikmin that I needed for the Libra, and that as I was just fucking standing there, there was a huge group of red Pikmin running off with the analog computer, and I really needed half of them. So I had this fuck-ass Benny Hill bit where, with not a lot of time to spare, I had to chase them down and try and wrangle half of them to bring back to get the Libra. And it was some shit out of a cartoon, and it actually did cost me the day. I didn't manage to get the final part back to the ship in enough time, and I don't know, man. I'm sure some people will be really annoyed by that, but I just thought it was funny. What? That's like 13 minutes out of my day for a funny bit. I thought that was worth it. I don't know what to tell you. So you're probably starting to piece together why I like this game so much. It gives you exactly 1 task to carry out at the very beginning of the game. That task is a fantastic motivator, and I really enjoy doing it. Doing it quickly is very fun, but I really enjoy that rather than having to do the whole thing in one go with no mistakes, you instead just optimize 13-minute chunks of gameplay to the best of your ability. It strikes a really good balance between being engaging and rewarding without going on long enough or carrying enough weight to be stressful. I really, really love that. However, I'm not going to deny that Pikmin definitely can be a little bit stressful, even with this more staggered approach. I mean, in the playthrough I did for this video, I beat the Forest of Hope over the course of 3 days, and that was really chill. The first 2 days were pretty easy, and on the 3rd day, where I got the Geiger counter, which, at least for me, is the hardest part to get in the Forest of Hope, I only had 2 parts to get, so, you know, it wasn't that bad, all things considered. It wasn't completely stress-free, but that was mostly my fault because I was insistent on doing a little speedrun trick to get the radiation canopy without blue Pikmin. It's cool when someone who knows what they're doing does it. When I do it, it's a whole lot of trick and not a lot of speedrun. But I beat the Forest Navel and the Distant Spring in 2 days each, and that was a bit much. In the Distant Spring, I had to get 5 parts on each day, and getting that down took a lot of resets and was a bit stressful at times, I won't deny. I would absolutely understand finding this a bit much, and maybe for some people this would lean further away from satisfying and more towards frustrating. And it doesn't even strictly apply to playthroughs where you're trying to beat the game in like a very low number of days. Maybe you find instances of the Pikmin only barely getting parts back to the ship in time more stressful than satisfying. Some players might really struggle with the 30-day limit, they might not be able to beat the game at all, or worse yet, if you look at like the comments on any video of the final trial, especially ones that are trying to beat it in a single day, you'll see a lot of comments from people that are stuck replaying the final day over and over because they're really struggling trying to get through the final trial and beat the Emperor Bulblax in one day, but they just don't want to give up on the save file, and I would really understand being frustrated by that. That's a real bummer. Maybe you're just really frustrated when the Pikmin don't do what you want them to. Like, that's not funny at all to you. That's more fuck you funny than haha funny. Or maybe, speaking of the Pikmin, maybe Pikmin dying really stresses you out. I know for some people, that's actually a big hurdle for getting into the series. You just hate the idea of any of these little dudes dying. And I get it. For me, it was more, fuck it, we ball by the end, but, you know, I definitely get it, that's fine. But either way, if you are like this, and you're just finding the game in general rather stressful, there's one point in each Pikmin playthrough that I think does a lot to circumvent this. And that's the Impact Site Revisit. See, Pikmin features three main areas: Forest of Hope, the Forest Navel, and the Distant Spring. And they're all great, I love all of them. I think the Forest Navel is my favourite, but I could change my mind in a week, whatever. And they contain 8, 9, and 10 ship parts respectively. And you've probably noticed that doesn't add up to 30. That's 27. Well, there's one ship part in the game's final area, the final trial, and you need to get 29 ship parts to unlock that area in general, and then you get the last one for beating the final boss. That's fine. And then obviously you get the engine in the impact site on day 1, so that's 28. Wait, shit, I can't count, sorry. That still leaves one ship part, and that final part is actually located in the impact site. You just can't access it at the beginning of the game because you need yellow and blue Pikmin to get there, which you don't unlock until later. This means that no matter how well your playthrough is going, if you're consistently getting 4 or 5 parts per day, at some point you're gonna have to go back to the impact site for one single part. And it's nice as fuck. When you come back to the impact site, the only thing you have to do is get the positron generator from this pearly clamp, and that is not very hard and does not take that much time. The impact site is just really chill. It's a cute little area with a nice aesthetic and good vibes, and for the most part, there's no hostile enemies with the exception of the completely stationary pearly clamps. Even once you've got the positron generator, it's not like there's nothing to do in the impact site, because another really nice feature of it is that it's a fantastic opportunity to grind for Pikmin. Every single color of Pikmin gets one of these big old doodads that you get a million billion Pikmin from, and again, thanks to the lack of hostile enemies, it is really, really easy to grind for Pikmin here. Even if you take your time getting the positron generator and grind as many Pikmin as you can, you're almost always going to have time to spare in the impact site, and man, that can be really nice sometimes. I was really enjoying just standing there taking in the vibes, and, you know, I'm sure a lot of other people could relate. Another really awesome thing about the impact site is that it's where the Gulix lives. And I love the Gulix so much. I just need to go on a bit of a tangent about this guy. If you're not interested in listening to me talk about the Gulix, then you can skip ahead to someone else's video, honestly. I genuinely don't want you here. So from day 8 onwards, one of 2 creatures can appear in the impact site, in this area here. On even-numbered days, it'll be the Mamuda, and the Mamuda is neat. They're a funny little creature that can hurt Olimar, but can't actually hurt your Pikmin. Instead, they actually slap them into the ground and flower them. It's kind of fun. The Mamuda also appears in the Distant Spring in the game's challenge mode, and they've appeared in other Pikmin games since, specifically Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 4. They're cool. But on odd-numbered days, you'll find the Gulix. And the Gulix is fucking awesome. So the Gulix is actually considered a boss, which is really funny for a lot of reasons. This is something you could completely miss for a start, right? It only appears in the impact site from day 9 onwards. You might have already completed your impact site revisit by then. And even if you haven't, I don't know, you might end up coming here on a Mamuda day, so yeah, I don't know. And what's even wilder about this being the only opportunity you get to see the Gulix is that it's not just the only opportunity that you get to see the Gulix in a regular playthrough of Pikmin, but it's your only opportunity, period, because the Gulix doesn't appear in the game's challenge mode, and it doesn't appear in any other Pikmin games. This is all it gets. On top of being so easy to miss, it's also just a really weird boss in terms of how you fight it. It is impossible to fight with yellow or red Pikmin because they both just start drowning on contact with the Gulix. But if you use blue Pikmin, it's a completely free fight. It can toss them around, but it can't hurt blue Pikmin whatsoever. So like, it's not even much of a boss fight. And while it's not much of a boss fight, they gave this thing some really interesting behavior. By setting a bunch of Pikmin on one of the two nuclei within the Gulix and then luring the other one away, you can cause it to like stretch out. And if you do that and then attack the second nuclei, the Gulix sort of springs shut and the two nuclei within it collide, which causes it to take massive damage. It's just such a fun little interaction for a boss that so few players would actually find realistically. It's just infinitely charming to me. And what really ties the whole thing together, the cherry on top of the Gulix cake, is that once you beat Pikmin 1, you get this little credit scene where they show all of the enemies you encounter throughout the game. And even if you didn't happen to see it in your playthrough, the Gulix appears here. And the game fucking lies to you, because it shows the Gulix in the forest navel. So, I would imagine so many fucking people beat Pikmin, saw this thing in the credits, and was like, damn, now I gotta search the forest navel to find this thing. And I just love that. It's not a Gulix exclusive problem. A lot of enemies here appear in areas where they don't in the final game. But it's just so funny to me. I really do love it. They fixed it in the Switch port. They did put the Gulix where it's supposed to be. When asked about the reasoning behind this change, Miyamoto famously said, "Don't ever fucking talk to me again, you little freak," and strangled the guy doing the interview. So, you know, I guess it is what it is. Honestly, I feel like a big part of why I like the Gulix so much is that it almost feels kind of fake, like Playground Rumor-esque. Like, yeah, dude, sure, there's a secret boss that only appears in a specific area after a specific number of days, but not on every day after that specific number of days. And I guess, yeah, the Gulix does appear in the game's credits, so it's not like the game is hiding it from you, but it sure as fuck is going to lie about it to you, because his ass is not in the forest navel. It legitimately feels like the Gulix is one step away from being some Sonic and Melee type shit, although granted, it's a bit more of a blue blob than a blue blur, and I guess the Gulix has the crucial difference of being, you know, actually real and in the game. Still, I cannot stress enough how fun it is to me that, despite the fact Pikmin is a relatively small game, time that could have gone towards making the game bigger or longer went towards things like the Gulix. It's hard to explain, but stuff like that is just infinitely charming to me. I really do adore it. So yeah, I love the Gulix and I love the Impact Site. Even when you're really trying to cram as much as you can into individual days, the Impact Site Revisit is just a really nice breather from it all. The only time the Impact Site Revisit is going to be like really stressful is if you're doing a real-time run, where every second really does count. And honestly, it might feel like I've kind of been ignoring the idea of real-time runs, but like, if you're at the point where you're like speedrunning Pikmin, you've probably gotten more out of the game than I ever could have. I think this is something people tend to miss when it comes to speedruns. Like, if you look up any popular run, especially one that has a lot of glitches or skips, and you look at the comments, you'll usually find some shit like, "Oh, you're not even playing the game, you're just glitching and skipping. Can't these runners just slow down and enjoy the game as it was intended?" And it's like, man, what the fuck? Do you seriously think that speedrunners have no interaction with games outside of speedrunning them? Like, no, they probably got into speedrunning because they played the game to bits as is. They just wanted to find a new way to get enjoyment out of a game that clearly means a lot to them. I understand that a lot of what I've been talking about doesn't apply to real-time runs of Pikmin, but that doesn't matter, because I'd imagine a lot of the people who are doing real-time runs of Pikmin have already enjoyed the game in the same way that I have. They started off with casual playthroughs, moved on to ones where you beat the game in as few days as possible, and then just naturally moved on to real-time runs. People are capable of enjoying games in more than one way, and it's always quite frustrating to see people who just can't wrap their head around that. Appreciate the game however you see fit, or even better, appreciate the fact that there's more than one way to appreciate it at all. That's cool as fuck! And listen, I know we've mostly been focusing on gameplay with this video, talking about how Pikmin isn't really a cozy game, but maybe more of a comfort game. something you can always come back to and just enjoy the process of getting slightly better at each time. But that isn't to discredit Pikmin's aesthetics and vibes, because those are fantastic as well. Personally, I think Pikmin 1 absolutely nails its aesthetics and atmosphere. The game feels very down to earth. Oh shit, too soon? The environments are lovely, but in a very natural way where they don't feel over-engineered at all. You're not going to find yourself stopping to look at little details or anything like that, but that doesn't detract from the fact that you just really like being in the environment as a whole. They're just really pleasant. Another thing I kinda love is how Pikmin handles the time of day on a visual sense. Rather than just gradually changing over time, you get one shift in how the world looks going from morning to, I guess, midday, and then everything kinda looks the same up until about 75% of the way through the day, and then you sort of get this gradual shift as you progress to sunset. On top of just looking great, another benefit to these more drastic changes in lighting as opposed to a gradual one that took place over the course of the entire day, is that it's much more readable to the player. You could make the argument that a more gradual change would look nicer, would be more realistic, or at the very least would be more impressive, and while that might be true, it's a lot harder to notice in the moment. You'd click it once, be like, oh, that's cool, and then it would probably escape your mind. Having these more drastic changes is great because it serves a subtle reminder to the player to start wrapping things up. I think the more drastic changes are just a really neat way of conveying information to the player, while still looking lovely in their own right. Pikmin 1 also has a lot of cute little details that really go a long way to make the world feel that much more alive. Like dwarf Bulbobs waking up sleeping Bulbobs if you get too close, blue Pikmin going out of their way to save drowning Pikmin, or similar to the Mamuda and Gulix in the impact site, the fact that on different days, different creatures can get added to areas that they previously weren't in. Just as an example, did you know that on day 15 a swooping snitchbug appears in the Forest of Hope? That's like so specific, I would imagine almost no one ran into that guy. Which is good, because I fucking hate the swooping snitchbug. I've already talked about how good of a character Olimar is, but I think another aspect to him that does a lot for the game's atmosphere is the fact that he's the only speaking character.
Stop fucking crying, bitch! Where? I don't wanna fucking hear.
The fact he's so likable and that he's truly alone in this world just really makes you want to do everything you can to get him back home. And what else is nice about the fact that he's the only character with dialogue is that it means there's not an unreasonable amount of dialogue in the game in general, so once you're familiar with it, it doesn't take long to get through at all. You can just skip through the ship logs, the little things he has to say about ship parts as you collect them if you want. They're obviously lovely when you first read through them, but on repeat playthroughs, again, where I think the game really shines, they don't get in your way at all, they're not intrusive, and that's lovely. I think a massive part of why I love this game so much is that it feels so humble. It's a small game, but it's not ashamed of that at all. It set out to do one thing, did it, and then didn't bite off more than it can chew. Time that could have maybe went towards adding another area or more things to do in existing areas went towards small little details or writing new ship logs for Olimar. I don't know, I find it really charming. And honestly, I think this really linear, simple approach works well for Pikmin. It really kind of puts you in Olimar's shoes. If you were Olimar, you wouldn't be going off doing silly little side quests or whatever. You wouldn't be interacting with other characters and shit like that. No, you would just do the one thing that you need to do to get back home. And that's so nice. Pikmin 1 is just such a likable game, and I've loved every minute I've spent with it. It's a game that I would encourage pretty much everyone to try. I'm not saying the game is for everyone. I love it to bits, but even then there are things I don't love about the game. I think as a final boss, the Emperor Bulblax isn't quite it. He looks awesome, no mistake about that, but I don't know, I don't love the fight itself. If you know what to do, he's kind of free, and if you don't, I'd imagine it's a bit of a nightmare, but I don't know, it's not that big of an issue. Honestly, I can forgive a Pikmin boss being kind of whatever, because, you know, it's supposed to be an actual creature, not a cool boss with epic patterns for you to deal with. Still, I thought Pikmin 2's final boss was a bit better. I mentioned how the terrain is lovely, and I'll absolutely stand by that, but there is this one fucking bit in the distant spring that's just it's not it. I don't know why it's like that. Most of Pikmin's terrain looks lovely and really natural, so I just don't understand why the distant spring got the Marble Madness treatment. At the very least, I get some good puzzles out of this weird terrain, but I don't know. I feel like you could have had good puzzles and still made the terrain look nice. That's literally in other areas in the game. This one doesn't bother me at all personally, but if you wanted things to do in Pikmin that aren't the main story but faster, you're a little shit out of luck. There is challenge mode, where you just grow as many Pikmin as you can in a single day, but that's not for me personally. I barely have any footage of it, honestly. It's just not really my thing. And if you don't enjoy that, there's not really anything else. I don't know, I feel like some kind of free play mode where you can just wander around in every main area in the game with unlimited time could have been kind of fun, but who's to say? I am also sorry to inform you that Pikmin is a firm believer in the please approach to letting you know that your health is low. The second Olimar's health drops below half, the game is sending you on a one-way trip to Beep City. Still, it's not as bad as it could be. I found it much more irritating in Pikmin 2 because you don't have any way of healing in caves, whereas in Pikmin 1, you can just go up to the ship and get your health restored to full no issue. Although it is worth mentioning that you don't have this option in challenge mode. It's by no means a huge issue though. Unlike something like Paper Mario, there's no benefit to being at low health, so at the end of the day, you could kinda just not get hit, and then you wouldn't have to deal with it at all. Another issue people might have that I guess kinda goes away once you're more familiar with it is Pikmin just not doing what you want them to do. Like I mentioned earlier, Pikmin can trip, and that can be really annoying. And another issue that you can have is that, like, yeah, once you know where a ship part is, you know where it is, but what you might not be prepared for is where the Pikmin fucking take it. One of the most infamous examples would be the Geiger counter in the Forest of Hope. Once you set your Pikmin on it, you'd think they'd just take it down this teeny tiny ledge, like they do with other treasures at other points in the game, but no, they're gonna go the long way, past a borrowing Snagret and a bunch of Bulborbs that you might have felt very clever for maneuvering your Pikmin around. Nope, they're just gonna go say hi to them. I hope you're fine with that. Wouldn't want those Pikmin to fall down the teeny tiny ledge. God forbid. It can just be hard to tell where the Pikmin are gonna go sometimes. Like, there's this very suspiciously placed ball bear next to the massage machine that the Pikmin dodge with no issue. But then, once you stick a bunch of Pikmin on the Goulon Drive, despite the fact they carry it through a very wide area, they just walk up to this ball bear and give him a little love tap. Fucking fantastic. Another potential issue relating to ship parts is that on top of not always knowing where the Pikmin are going to take them, you also don't know how many Pikmin you're going to need to carry them until you start throwing Pikmin on them, which means you might be ill-prepared if you go with a small group. Obviously this goes away with experience, but it'll definitely catch new players. I know it caught me. Let's go! We did it! Okay, how many does the screw require? Surely not a lot, right? Fucking hell! 30 for a screw? But listen, this is more nitpicking than anything. I don't really care about many of these issues, I'm just saying them so you're aware of them in case you want to go try the game for yourself and get surprised by them. I honestly find most of this more charming than actually annoying. Pikmin 1 is a really special game, and I got so much more out of it than I was initially expecting when I first played it. It's really kind of changed my perspective on a lot of games too, because since replaying Pikmin, I've actually ended up replaying a bunch of games that I never thought I'd try again. This is the crux of what makes Pikmin such a uniquely enjoyable experience for me. There's just so many little things to appreciate about it, but also so many ways that you can enjoy it. I think on your first playthrough, the one where you're going in knowing the least, you're the most unfamiliar with the game, it sort of can lean into that more cozy, whimsical vibe. You're going to inherently be playing the game slower because you need more time to adjust yourself and you're not as familiar with your environment, so that gives you more of an opportunity to appreciate the little details. But at the same time, because you're playing the game slower, the threat of the 30-day time limit is much more real, and that sort of keeps the cozy whimsical vibe in check, so you do have that drive pushing you forward. Pikmin's 30-day limit and the general simplicity of the game as a whole does wonders for it, I think. For new players, it's a great motivator, and it pushes them to, actually beat the game, but for returning players, it sort of makes the game approachable, which might seem weird, like you'd think being approachable would be for new players, not experienced players, but that's the thing. Because Pikmin is inherently such a short game, picking it up again just to, do a second or third, maybe fourth playthrough of it is so low stakes. You don't have that sense of, man, I could replay this, but I'm so busy, I know I'm never gonna finish it, or, oh, I know when I get to this part, I'm just gonna get sick of it. If they really wanted to, an experienced player could just blast through the entire game in an afternoon, and they'd probably come out of it maybe a bit tired, but pretty happy, because you know, that must have been a pretty good run. But even if they didn't want to do that, they could just do a day or two, be happy with that, leave it there, go to bed, come back another day, chip away at another day or two, maybe feel really good about how one day went. Pikmin 1 is just so easy to appreciate. There's so many ways to enjoy it, and it's just so comforting. I feel like any day I could just boot up Pikmin, tear through a day of it, feel really good about how I did that day, and then just leave it be. I'm not obligated to do some side quest or anything. I'm not worrying about like, man, there's so many things I gotta get done, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. It's just nice. Pikmin 1 is so contained, it's so approachable, it's something I always feel like I can come back to, and I really, really do love it for that. But yeah, if you have any interest at all, I would implore you to try Pikmin. It's on GameCube, it's on Wii, it's on Switch, it's on pretty much anything if you think you can evade Nintendo. Just give it a shot. At worst, you'll just find that the game isn't for you. Maybe you'll find aspects of it that I found charming, more frustrating than anything. But who knows, maybe you'll end up loving the game. Maybe you'll have an experience similar to mine, or better. Maybe you'll progress from what I do to like an actual full-on speedrunner. Who's to say? So, there you have it. That's pretty much everything I wanted to say about Pikmin. I'm sorry if this game felt a bit unfocused or a bit nothing-burgery. Like I was just kind of repeating, I like this game. Beating it fast is kind of fun. I replayed it, and I'm like 65% sure why I did that. It's been a while since I talked about a game, not to just throw a bunch of facts at you about it, but just because I really liked it. So I might be a little bit out of practice when it comes to that. Still, I really wanted to give this video an earnest attempt, because not only is this just a style of video I'd like to do more of in the future, but Pikmin has genuinely been such an important and unique experience for me that I really did want to talk about it. It's engaging yet also very comfy. It's approachable while also being quite deep. It's experimental yet also remarkably consistent. These are all things that I really do value in games, yet I can find a little hard to stick with when they lean too far in any one given direction. Pikmin is a game that I'd recommend to anyone who maybe feels like they need to unwind a bit, but maybe doesn't have the time or, admittedly, the attention span for something a little bit more long form. So yeah, that's it for realsies. If you play Pikmin yourself and you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, then fire away. I'd love to hear them personally. And if you've never played Pikmin, but maybe this video convinces you to give it a shot, I'd also like to hear what you think down the line. I'm very curious personally. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching. Unless you are a swooping snitchbug, then I hate you.